Thank you, Harper. It's been really great to work with you, Vigdis, and your team at the National Gallery of Iceland. It's been a pleasure. Maholi came all the way from South Africa. Imagine how long it took the artist to fly out to Iceland. I came pretty close. London is only a few hours away. But we're very happy to be here together today and then have a conversation. Then we'd like to open up to you to ask Maholi questions you may have. So we will start probably for half an hour. So shall we start?
Yeah, sure.
So I want to ask Maholi, first of all, what was it like to go through the pandemic in South Africa personally, but also for your communities in South Africa?
Good afternoon, and thank you so much to all of you for coming out. It's so cold outside. It's really cold. I come from Durban and it's super warm. Thank you so much for a good reception. Thanks, Hapa. Thanks to the team. And actually, I didn't mind the long travel. It's everybody's dream to be in Iceland. I have the most beautiful images from people who have been here before. Then I think I was curious to be here to see how it goes. Every time when I travel, I always ask myself like basic questions before I respond to your questions.
Okay.
The first question that I ask myself is, where are the people? They are art lovers, they are our families, they are queer families, they are migrant people in Europe, they are people with disabilities, and they are art lovers. So I'm stuck with these questions each time I travel. And it just happened that it's one of the most important questions that we ask ourselves coming from spaces that were colonized. So it was so good to hear that this is the only country that is not traveled in Europe. And it excites me in a way. In fact, Katrina just shared that with us last night, and I'm grateful to hear that. How was the pandemic? Pandemic was one of the most painful period in our history. I guess as art practitioners, we then compelled to produce work that speaks to all the atrocities and all that is happening around us, you know. And if asking about COVID pandemic, I don't know which one. Pandemic as an HIV pandemic,
Sure. I guess the pandemic,
as in
COVID-19.
COVID
Yes, the
pandemic,
ones we are.
because there are many pandemics that happened before the recent past. Pandemic was one of those periods in our history where we are taught to pause for once and to rethink of what life is, and also to treasure life in every other way. One, learning to live with our neighbors that maybe you might not have had good connections with them, as in like asking ourselves how each person is doing next door, even though you knew that you couldn't hold or hug that person due to the pandemic itself. The pandemic has affected economies around the world, and Africa is one of those countries that has its own issues. Many people, besides losing lives, but losing businesses also, lives lost, painful, not being able to visit our families and friends who died lonely at hospitals was another painful part of the pandemic. And I guess that the same pandemic affected different people who express themselves differently.
Yes.
If you are LGBTQIA persons, you are queer in your surroundings, and you don't have access to essentials or basics, it was even worse than any other individual who we share the very same space with. So for queer people without shelter, it was a double blow. For queer people without shelter who were chased away from their homes and dying in the streets with no documentation or identity was even worse. I think the proper statistics of the impact of the pandemic is yet to be read about, because currently we are still like dealing with the aftermath, which is like too soon because the countries were freed recently. It's not even a year yet
Right.
since it has happened. So as South Africa kind of like try to deal with the impacts of the pandemic, I'm from Durban, and Durban was hit with floods. More than 400 lives were lost. This is just after we were told that the country is free, everything is open. And as we try to deal with that, June this year, so April 2022, it was floods in Natal. And then June 2022, young people lost their lives at a tavern in Eastern Cape. So it's like it never ends as you try to deal with something and something else erupts. So it's one of those things.
So I understand 3 shootings happened over the same weekend in July, and at least 21 people were killed in a very young age of 19 to 35. Do you know what prompted this kind of shooting to take place, and how did actually people in South Africa cope with the grief, such a vast loss?
It's painful for families to deal with death. It doesn't matter whether a person is young or old. Death is death. Somebody's loss is just too hard to bear. The June event, which happened during Youth Month, because June in South Africa is Youth Month, looking at the 1976 June 16. So looking at what happened then at the tavern, it wasn't shootings. Actually, it was youngsters who went to enjoy themselves after the end of the school term. So they went to drink like what young people do. And apparently we told that something was put on the drinks that were given to them. So they thought that maybe some poison was put in their drinks. And all of them, they just died. So there was no blood.
I see.
Yeah. And then a few weeks later, there were a number of shootings at different taverns. And then the person responsible for that tavern is not yet held accountable for the loss of those 21 young lives. Young people as young as in like 13 years of age until age 20. So why we speak about this specifically, because my organization as duty is to document almost all that is happening around us. So we documented the aftermath and also parts of what happened there, and especially the funerals, looking at yet another a pivotal moment in South African deadly history, where we'll always look back and commemorate the lives of those we lost along the way.
Part of your artistic photographic practice and activism has been tracing lives of people in your community. So things like funerals or weddings have been the hallmarks of people's lives. At the same time, you also actually express your feeling of grief in your self-portrait series, Somoyama Gomoyama. I think this picture you're looking at now was created in a way in response to the mass shooting. Could you talk a little bit about this particular picture here?
The image was taken in San Francisco during my travels, and for me, it doesn't matter how far am I. So pain is pain, no matter how far. So this image was taken when I was on movements in San Francisco after hearing about the passing of many lives back at home. So the blanket is used when people mourn the passing of someone, or the blankets could be used as an exchange of goods between families when one is about to get married. So there are blankets that are exchanged between the families of the groom and the bride in the process. With this particular one, it's a blanket that I used when I was at a friend's place there, and it just spoke to the moment. A moment for me to remember, a moment to memorize, a moment to grieve the losses. So that's what this image is all about. As I look away, I'm looking away from home, but pain hits within. So that was my response to what happened back at home.
It's looking outward, but also looking internally, just tracing the history and emotions, the feeling you have, and also you share with the others. So I think one picture can talk so much, particularly from your Somoyama Gomoyama series. Each picture seems to be almost like expressions of the collective memories, collective experiences, collective traumas. Yes, particularly looking back to the policies and practices, brutal practices under the apartheid. You will see some of those pictures in the exhibition at National Gallery. During the pandemic, I also realized that you also expanded your artistic practice into three-dimensional sculpture work, for example. How did this happen, Muholi? Or maybe this happened before the pandemic.
I'm known for producing photographs, of course, because I love photographs. And in terms of like space, it's easy to store photographs than other mediums. So sculpture pieces has existed in my life, but until recently, that I felt the need to come out, because people tend to, when they walk into any spaces, you think so and so, that's that person's medium, you know. So in this one, it's pieces that were currently shown at different spaces, and one of them being a F&B art fair. And I shared this speaking on yet another loss. There have been quite a number of cases of women under siege, women who have been brutalized by those connected to them. The femicide and gender-based violence that is vast in South Africa now. So I use a rope. It's difficult to see. To speak on that confinement in your own space with maybe someone there to intimate with, but yet you cannot like break free. So in this sculpture piece, I wanted to present that. It's quite a huge piece that was shown in Joburg recently. It's like 3 to 4 meters high. And it was just the centerpiece for the fair, in which I invited people to share the experiences of those they know or experiences of themselves on how the meaning of being confined, the meaning of being displaced in your own particular personal space.
And of course, actually, some beautiful paintings, which some of them came out of your photographic work as well. Yeah.
This is just like one of those painful moments. Also speaks on arts and feminisms and speaks on like womanhood when a woman is about to get married. This is a painting which is like 180 tall, 120 wide, where I'm speaking on the dowry when a woman is pure, a virgin, and 11 cows are paid for her. And then when a woman is no longer pure and lost her virginity somehow, it means that the family of the woman will have less cows. So thinking of like how women's bodies, they become state property, and also how the very same woman as livelihood is dependent on the father, who then becomes the entrepreneur based on somebody's vagina, basically.
I think that the who owns the body, who is responsible for particularly women's, I think health, I think has been a kind of worldwide issue. Particularly in America. I guess the women do not have rights anymore to abort, for example, because of the recent decision came out of the Supreme Court. So I think I pay attention to your, particular sense of using certain material, looking at the photograph as an object, first of all. You make a beautiful, beautiful black and white prints. When I saw this particular beadswork too, I couldn't help thinking about your particular attention, the selections of material, selections of beads, selections of color, just a vibrant, vibrancy coming out of this particular work. And of course, this work reminded me the experience I had at the A4 Foundation exhibition a couple of years ago when I was in, Cape Town for the first time. So this show is a very important show. Ikuhono, Lasse, and Natalie Muholi has been, as part of their artistic practice, mentoring younger generations of artists, often in your hometown and the vicinity. So in this one, 25 artists actually, they made work. They made actually painting, some beadswork, often based on Muholi's photographic work. Could you tell a little bit about your mentoring, which has become part of the hallmark for your Muholi Art Institute? But maybe this is a good place to start about your mentoring others.
The image before was made in 2012, actually, 10 years ago. I commissioned a group of women to do me, because it's always nice to see what people think of you and how they could approach the subject matter in a light way. I still work with them because I believe that sharing wealth is easy and it heals than to have too much of anything. And then with the next picture now, 2019 was when South Africa celebrated 25 years of democracy, from 1994 to this period. And I wanted to work with a group of young people from my hometown, which is Durban. So we have about like many major cities, but then Johannesburg, Durban, and Cape Town become those main cities known if you visit the country. And then here, as part of that, I wanted to work with young people. And I spoke to a collective that is active in the city to know who were the artists working in Durban at that time. So I paid them to work on this work, and these are all of them. Unfortunately, one of these young men was killed. The one on top, the first, Andile Mapumolo, was brutally murdered in August in Durban, sadly. So we continue to document. But then the work that the young people produce then becomes the major collection of our art history in Natal. I wanted to work with young people to produce a documentary to have an exhibition and to have a book. It was a successful project. From 25 artists, it became like 43 artists. So I hold about like 200 pieces done from there, and it was a way in which I wanted to support other artists. Some of them have become like big, stars. They are unreachable from this experience, and I'm happy that that gesture has changed lives, and I still continue to commission different artists in South Africa. Right now, I work with students at different colleges and high schools, and also have an exchange program in which people visit cities that they never imagined that they'll visit. But to see and visit museums and art galleries, to see what other artists do in those particular cities in order to learn. Because in as much as we have like creative arts programs at colleges, not many people, not many teachers has much sense like traveling artists who get to see more works. So I teach and I co-facilitate arts programs. And I have an arts academy in rural Durban where every Saturday and Sunday young people, they come and produce artworks. They learn, taught by teachers in the area, on how to best equip themselves with different art materials or art practices. Yeah, and the picture that you're seeing here was when we had an exhibition and we opened it up to different schools. So a lot of schools in Cape Town came to see the show, and we managed to reach out to more than 1,000 young learners at different schools, and it was one of the most successful projects in 2019. And then we also did this show was first opened in Durban, and I work with KZNSA. Also, we reach out to a number of schools that never been, or the kids never set their foot at the gallery. And then that exhibition opened up, and also to educators to get to see what this thing called art is all about.
I remember just observing your discussion with the students at the time. I think several questions came to my mind. I think he was asking, what does that mean to make art? What does that mean to be an artist in society? I think those are the questions which really stood out from that visit.
Yeah, and I think questioning when it comes to art is very, very important because it opens minds, and also it challenges the young learner to look at art and process art in a different manner. Art is not just art. Maybe even the masters in art who started like producing abstraction or abstract work were never understood, maybe seen as mad people. But then this generation of ours get to appreciate what was seen as nothingness, and looking at it now, we dissect it and process it in different ways. And from appreciation, as we use our six senses because we feel it. We don't know what was going on in the mind of that particular artist. So when I teach art, I always request people to think with their all, use your six senses, engage with the art, taste it, feel it, in as much as you see and smell the painting, even if you were not there when the artist produced that particular piece. So it's all part of like processes or processing that takes place when we produce these works.
Since you mentioned, the next picture is a bit of a throwaway. I'm sorry, we didn't talk about this picture, but I thought actually when you talk about actually smell of chemicals in darkroom, right? Because I think I just want to go back a little bit about your own learning, at the market Photoshop, market photo workshop, for example, in Johannesburg, where one of the teachers was David Goldblatt, who who I guess touched many lives, including mine. So Muholi, I'm sorry to just throw in one picture, you and David, but I thought you may want to talk a little bit about your own learning.
I studied photography at Market for a Workshop, which is a school that was funded by one of our godfathers, David Goldblatt, one of the most important South Africans, somebody so dear to me. We had engagements in terms of talking about our love for photography and how photography changed our way of thinking. So that picture on the right is taken by Goldblatt in 1972 in Soweto. A picture on the left is taken by me in 2007. And this common piece in this picture is the stove. And then this is the coal stove, and which doesn't use no electricity used there. It's solid. Mine is Rettindabaráttu. I don't know about the brand on the right. So this speaks of warmth, the connection of people with their cooking space, kitchen. In this instance, it's smaller setting than your big kitchens, maybe for some of you here. So the image on the left is of two lovers, same-sex couple, who live together. This is just a year after South Africa legalized civil union, which is of same-sex partnerships. And I felt the need of producing an image not in the bedroom, not in the closet. I just needed a common space that is known by everybody, regardless of how we feel or how we express ourselves, whether we love the same gender or the opposite sex. A kitchen is a kitchen, like how a toilet is a toilet. So this is all about this image, but it's the warmth, it's the love, it's the connection, it's the cooking space, the eating space, the connecting space, that warm space. And we use these coal stoves when it's winter time. Yeah, or when it's like, when we're about to approach winter. So it's just another alternative. So this was all about it. And the partner who's wearing jean was my colleague at FEW, which is Forum for Empowerment of Women. And it's an organization that caters for the needs of Black lesbians and gender non-conforming people. Yeah.
The smell and also warmthness, I think those two elements, I think connect to pictures, but also those pictures are both photographed in South Africa also connect you to something you are familiar. I think everybody has a kitchen, right? Everybody wants to return to the kitchen. It's a beautiful picture. I wonder, do you want to talk a little bit more about this institute, or?
I don't mind.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now going back to Muholi's own initiative to teach and share with the younger generation. So Muholi has a fantastic strategy. So can you just share us a little bit about what are you doing, what are you going to do with the institute?
For every, say, 1,000 Icelandic kron, 25% goes to community work, to communities. For every 10,000 I earn, 25% goes to communities. So this is the structure of how I deal with work. I have Muholi Arts Institute, which is a space for artistic knowledge sharing. And KHA, in this structure, I have artist in residency. And then I have scholarships. With my scholarships, I have a King's Harvest Academy with 10 juniors from age 7 until age 18. And then I have AFDA, which is a school for film, and it's people who have already done their undergrad. Now they are doing postgrad in film and business. And then I have OMS, I have students who are studying films and photography. Then every week we run art workshops, and then we have conference every now and then. Then we have skills building. We train people in computer literacy because every artist needs to do research, or those that works with them, they need to have an understanding of computers. And then at MAI, which is a short there, as you see, Muholi Arts Institute, it reads as MAI. And then we have a media team. I work with photographers, writers, and filmmakers. From time to time, we have performances, poetry, and music. And then also, we have exhibitions from what is produced from artist in residency and beyond. We have exhibitions. Then we have exchange art program with different high schools. So high schools, they move from Natal, they come to Cape Town to learn and also to visit galleries and museums because Cape Town has the most. So that exchange continues. And by the end of the year, at least the young learners who are doing visual arts, they have an understanding of the theories that they learn in their schools. Then travels. I'm here now. Some of my colleagues have been to Italy, they've been to Ghana, wherever there are exhibitions. We currently have an exhibition in the forest in Mauritius. And also, we have had more than 25 guest talks since March. And edu tours. So, educational tours is when people move from creative spaces and get to interact with artists in those spaces who are experts in their own field. So, this is just the structure. Each and every element supposed to have its own director because it's a big project. So far, so good, and I could see progress. Right now, I have requested someone to write a big report of all of this in that way. Whoever that is not there or unable to get home will be able to read about what MAI is doing or what Muholi International Production is doing. So all of this is made possible from sales of my work. So anything that is sold, chunk of the money runs this project. I don't receive funding by choice because I believe that if I receive funding, I'll be blocking someone who really needs funding. So this is all about it. Yeah, whatever that you see there at the exhibition, I'd say 90% of the works on show is sold out. So 25% of all the works that is sold out has paid. Most of the people there has paid for children's education, has paid for young people to further their studies, especially in photography and film.
So your work for the Institute actually is, well, not only supplementing, actually establishing infrastructure of art ecology, particularly for the next generations to come. So it's a very transformative project you're taking on as a part of your artistic practice. But then at the same time, you also, as an art maker, you are making photographs every day, while you are in South Africa or even while you are traveling. But we always go back to this one very important portrait of Busi Sigasa, which is in the exhibition at the National Gallery, by the way. And could you tell us a little bit about the importance of this particular portrait of your friend?
Late 90s, as I was trying to perfect photography, I tried to work on a project, but it didn't have a name for it. And then as I grew into it, it became Faces and Faces. So around early 2000, so much was happening back at home. And then Faces and Phases became a tree with a lot of branches. So Busisikasa, for most scholars who work on literature, who work on feminist histories, etc., on women's studies, Audre Lorde becomes that voice in which we speak or understand. So here is my former colleague, the late Bosisi Gasa, who became, unfortunately, a survivor at the time of hate crime, was, was raped multiple times and contracted HIV and succumbed to its complications in 2007 in March on the 12th. So Busi becomes that premise, that beginning that concretized this project. When one asked me, why do what you do, I wanted us as community members, us as friends to remember. So this image was taken at Constitution Hill, which is one, like Constitution Hill, that's where the Constitution Court sits. And it's one of the highest courts in the country. The image was taken there. That's where we both worked because the organization that we both worked for was located there. The offices were located there. So of all faces and phases participants, Bosi is one image that cannot be forgotten because of the role that she played back then and also her voice and the words that she left behind. Though no more, but her spirit, lives on.
In the exhibition, you see Busi Sigasa's portrait as well as the poetry Busi wrote. And Busi says, even when I pass, you'll remember me through this photograph. So this indexical nature, the photograph traces the people's presence and also passing in many instances. This project, which has become one of the epic photographic practice projects in the history of photography, I think, has been tracing lives of Muholi's community, primarily Black women, including transgender women and non-binary people, but from Muholi's community. So in the exhibition, whether it was at the Tate Modern or National Gallery of Iceland, you see the portraitures presented in a grid format. And the title is Faces and Phases. Faces, right? Phases. Phase meaning one phase to another phase. How one person change over time from one gender expression or sexual expression to another phase of expression. So you've traced, some of the people appeared again. That's the purpose of this particular project. Muholi call people who are in the photograph participants. They are partaking in this project to write and trace histories. They're all in the exhibition at the National Gallery here. Let's just go over real quickly then. Just to hear pictures in the exhibition. I think it's probably good to hear the artist's voice on some works in the exhibition. Only half the picture, your earliest body of work, if I may say, the exhibition Muholi, the first museum show at the Johannesburg Art Gallery in South Africa, that show had this title, correct? Just to trace a little bit of your memory of early work, if you could, please.
My early work, I could say that I'm indebted to all the people who were willing to participate in this work. People who gave me their time, people who gave me their bodies, people who dared to stand in front of me, of course, risking our lives, because we're speaking at a period where there are a lot of rapes, there are a lot of persecution, there are a lot of insult that people bore just because of expression, of gender expression, of course. Here I was trying to make sure that I give as much, but yet at the same time, thinking of what could have happened to us as this project was going on was something else. Not only one had to deal with the community, like a homophobic community, but we still had to deal with difficult families where we come, um, rude educators, where some people go to school, a number of expulsion from schools, you know, a lot and lots and lots and lots of like difficulties that people were facing at this time. And difficult media, the insults from media, being censored by mainstream media, which then forced one to to continue then to give up, you know. So this was the painful period, like the first 10 years from 2000 until 2010. But I did not stop. I continued. So some of these pictures that you see of this young person passing as a man, binding breast, because that this time they couldn't afford to remove the breast, and I think this is the early period of people coming out as trans or undoing these gender complexities that are attached to our names, you know. So this is my early work, and work before this one was just like on blood, in which I painted with my menstruation, and it was part of my October 2021 exhibition. So these are just the elements that defines a woman's body: the bra, the lingerie, versus what other parties wear on daily basis. Yeah.
You know, out of your respect to the people who are photographed, you often you chose not to reveal their identities by not showing their faces.
I just chose to respect, which is major, and then also to say what was the focal point, the main element that I wanted to share with the viewers. For instance, with this person with hairy chest, what does that mean in different tribes? And also how people like that are seen and read. Like women with beard, for instance, maybe who might have like the different internal organs that are not known. But the minute people read such bodies, such faces, it equals to something else. And further, you know, exclusion from the society that sees bodies as what they want to see them.
And in particular, I think actually deviating from the standard practice, standard norm, I think that itself is seen as perhaps, you know, un-African. It was something which that was actually the maybe people's, you know, preconception, but you are really helping people who were who they were to reveal, you know, who they were as much as they can at that moment. So transitioning from early body work to faces and phases, where Moholi's participants are fully shown. You see their faces, their bodies, and being photographed over some years was a big transition, wasn't it?
Yeah. So this has been like, it's also my own phase,
Yes.
you know, and the transition is not only one-sided. It's not only for the participants, but also it's my own transformation.
Sure.
Which is then projected here on Somyama Ngonyama. And then Somyama is the dark one, and Ngonyama is my mother's clan name, or Ngonyama, or Ngwane, or Mahlase. So for most of us born within Nguni tribes, clan names are important because they speak to your origins, where you come from, and how you pride yourself with your background. Yeah.
I learned actually from your work a little bit of isiZulu. So the language Muholi grew up with, many languages. isiZulu,
yeah.
isiZulu is one, but also English, certainly. But you have to learn what this particular phrase means in isiZulu. When you go to the exhibition, you see some titles were kept in isiZulu. We didn't translate them into English because historically, I grew up in Japan, so English was never really imposed to me, but in your country, English was the language of the colonizer. So you always have to actually learn things in their language, not your own language. So this time, Muholi wanted us to learn actually the meanings of phrases and, the
Even
context. Yes.
even pronunciation, Yeah, my first language is Zulu, and it is the language of the heavens, they say. So we have the king and the queen now, and we have them. At the end of the month, there'll be a coronation of the new king, because the late king passed last year. Yeah, so what you're about to see in this work, I use a lot of elements. With the first picture, it's the height of COVID, and that's when most people were worried about essentials: the toilet paper, the mask, sanitizer, the gloves. So I made images with all those nitty-gritties prior to COVID, and then when COVID started, then the work was retrieved somehow. So I keep on going back to women and work. I keep on going back to my mother's life, who worked as a domestic worker. Here I have clothespins or pegs that I used for drying clothes. And in my lips, I use toothpaste. And I adorn my ears with pegs again. And I covered my shoulders with a domet that you get for €5 at your supermarket. So I try by all means to use all that is accessible to me, and also to share with young photographers or wannabes, to say that photography is you. It's not all the material things that we use, because some people feel the pressure of being at the studio. You have to use the most expensive camera whatsoever. So my trade is from a dark room, and all that goes, that makes sense to me, that speaks to my surrounding, is what I used.
It's a do-it-yourself, like
Yeah, DIY, yeah.
yes, in the everyday travel and being. I wonder if you're making one while you're here in Reykjavik.
Yeah, but I think it's important for people to get used to this this dark-skinned,
Yeah,
not to exoticize it, but to say that we live as human beings. There are maybe part of our lives that are not understood, but it's very important, just for, like, out of respect, and also to ask questions in a kinder manner, so people will understand. So this image is taken in around June in New York. For this year, I wanted to do more than 40 hotels where I live, where I sleep, and also checking out or sizing the treatment of black bodies at those hotels. I see it still persists, because we're still not respected. On my way here, I sat on a good class inside the aeroplane. They said it's business class. A young, fine man just forgot to give me a card, just a card for a meal. And he gave all the 14 white clients the card to choose just a meal for breakfast. On my way here, I was on Lufthansa airline 856 from Frankfurt to Iceland. So then it is through such experiences or personal experiences that I produce these dark skin images based on personal experience and how we treated as people. So I'll be sharing my picture from here. Also this one. I look at, when we go to different hotels, you Mexico could be at the same hotel like me, but because some white people are so racist, there's one thing that I find common when we share the space. That towel knows no race. Because as how other people hate black people, but when you walk into any normal hotels, especially in spaces where black people afford to be there, you won't know which towel was used by who and for what. So I go back to that fascination of like the white towel and the body. Anyways, yeah. This is another experience in Copenhagen. This image was taken in Copenhagen. I stayed at this beautiful hotel. The woman who cleaned the hotel, they just decided to make the bed without changing the sheet, no change of towels, left everything, didn't even pick up the dustbin. So this is my trip before part of this Tate exhibition. So the treatment is so bad. Sometimes you even like wonder if people sees this. So nice experience happened this morning when I was with Yasu, and I didn't say anything. And next image will be produced.
I think actually the journey you take, I think as a South African black person, I think is different from your experiences and my experiences too. So I think actually Muholi's pictures make us be curious how the people in Muholi's position, spend the day, travel. I think actually we wanted to think about every single picture, particularly Somuyama picture in the exhibition. What does that mean? What that could mean to all of you, right?
Yeah.
You want us to think.
Yeah, it just like forces us to think. It's just, I think also it helps us to be prepared, especially now at this like, with the movements that we take. It will be painful to even discuss it, but yeah, 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 it's one of those things. Hapa is worried about time.
I think she's signaling us it's time.
I guess we just give 10 minutes to the audience.
So should we open it up? Do you have a 10 minutes?
10 minutes to open up the conversation.
Okay, we will. Sorry, yes, but please, it's your turn to.
I think this is a roving mic.
Hi. I have a question about objects. I noticed that in your work, especially maybe in your self-portraits, you're using a lot of objects, very specific ones, and maybe I have the feeling that they might have a story. Like you talked about the towel, for instance, and I think it's very interesting. And I would like to, if you could tell us a bit more about why you are using objects, what does that mean, if they have a meaning, and why? Why is it important? What does it represent? Thanks.
Thank you so much. I didn't get your name.
Oh, sorry, Elise.
Ain't
Elise.
Elise.
Yes, it's French.
Okay, cool. I hear Elise. Are you a guest or you live here? Are you from here? I see. Thank you so much. Where are your people, Hapa? Where are the black people of Iceland? What happened to them? Do they come to the National Gallery?
I hope this exhibition will open up to all Icelanders. That would perhaps be the best step of having Muholi in Iceland. But we're not here because of today.
Yeah, so please forgive me, this is not an insult, I'm just curious. Because every country at least have 1% or 10% black or people of color. Anyways, I like objects because they connect with our realities. It could be a pair of scissors. We use it for a purpose. It's a functional tool. With this project, almost every element connects with my experience and what I want to say about that particular experience. The first image with the doormat and the pegs, it relates to my mother's work. So they are objects, but not just like useless objects. They have a function. So they say another man's trash is another man's treasure. So I like to work with what people see as like useless elements, but it's useful to me because people want to bring life to those elements and they say we recycle. I mean, for most of us from Africa, we've recycled most of our lives, even at the generation before our generation and those that came before us. Now we are taught to eat organic food, but we were organics, you know, we had that before the colonizers came into our spaces. And then we were told you have to praise God. Then we indoctrinated and taught to use a different kind of scripture. Then we're told that we have to use a different languages, but we had our own Nguni languages. So this takes back to what all these elements and objects were changed from what they were and what they are now. Yeah, so I like the idea of objects because that's how we educate. A pen is to write, spectacles is to see. Those are objects for maybe people who are from another planet. Because maybe they might not be using spectacles for seeing. Maybe they eat with them. So it depends, you know? Yeah. So for my next exhibition, which is it's gonna be seen next year, I'm using a common object, which is so known. It's gonna be fun because most humans they know what that is all about. Yeah. Thanks.
Time for two more questions, maybe? Another question?
Let's just have fun. I'm leaving on Monday. No need to be modest. Let's just engage nicely for once. Then I'll be happy that I was here. Just pass on the mic. Thank you.
Thank you. It's just maybe a similar question about the background of these images because they seem very specific, but they're blurred. So I didn't know if there was. I just really like that, and I think I understand it, but maybe there's more to say about why the background is.
The blur. For most people who shoot, it's called depth of field. I like it when I sound so smart. It's just the depth of field. I used a gray sheet, as an SHEET, not like shitting. And then I wetted it to create a feel like a not dry wall. And then I moved a little bit away from it because I wanted the subject, me, to be in focus. Because then if the background and the foreground were in focus, it would have disturbed your eye. So there are many rules that comes with photography. So that depth of field assists us to be in focus. And then the background that is out of focus, then it means that it's there but not that important with what you want to see. Thanks for your question, I like it. Yes. Let's take two and then go see the exhibition. At the exhibition, I won't be responding to your questions. Yes, there's one there. I guess I'm not that difficult. I'm with us. Let's just stick together. It's cold outside. I leave one day.
Okay, then let's go to a different subject. So you're looking at us in the audience. You're seeing us as being staggeringly white, as is the rest of Iceland. And I'm not even from here. I'm from another Nordic country. So I've just added to the whiteness. How do you actually feel, let's be real, when your exhibition is coming here to a predominantly white audience that is almost a monoculture?
I have to get. You got me. You got me. I hope you don't teach. Okay. I close my eyes. This is how white people do when they arrive in Africa. For most black people, they say, I want to touch the mother earth. They kiss the ground. All that madness. I'm here for a purpose. To change the mindset. To educate. To connect. To have conversations. One, because oftentimes we have scholars who come from the West, who comes from the North, with their own ignorance, which is so painful. And then we are forced to be consumed by their scholarship. We are forced to bow because whiteness is so into your face. But at the same time, we are scared because the past taught us that white man is the boss. This is me speaking from South Africa. Yeah. So coming here was with the hope that I will see likenesses, people like me who are born here, who might not have the same rights, because I hear from other European countries that in as much as you are black and you're born in Europe, you don't have citizenship. That's the most painful part. I don't know what goes from this end. I'm also here to learn and to share what might be unique to maybe white photographers. Maybe there are commonalities. And remembering that when we speak of like visual histories, when we speak of photographies, there's still that distinctions of race in what we see. The snow in Africa is not the snow in Europe. So with that said, when we come into this space, we have to come and tap on this ground delicately, knowing that what we think, it might be a perception, but then when we come here, the experience might differ. I don't know if you get what I mean. So I'm here to learn. I'm not here as a tourist. I'm not here as an artist. I'm here as a learner. To see what I could learn here, I could share it with the people back at home. Maybe what we read about in the media, on social media, is propaganda. Maybe, maybe not. But there's a lot of residues of the past that tend to persist when people are not well informed. And also I have to speak of, coming from a space of privilege, even being invited to come, and how I did not understand when Yasu wanted to take this show to Europe, to this far end of town, like part of the world. Never imagined. I've been to places like Oslo. When you're in Oslo, you think that it's the end of the world. I've been to to Sweden, and then you think that this is the end, And the more you go on and on and on, then you realize that these life lessons never ends. So I'm just here to learn, not to judge. As long as people don't trip on me, I won't trip on them. But then sometimes it's good to have honest conversations because we're adults now. And also, sadly, people carry, the sins of their forefathers. So I'm not a saint. I'm just here to learn. But if I were to close my eyes now, if Elsie did not ask that question, I would still be seeing white-skinned people. And it's not a crime. It's just that it happened that I tapped my foot here. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Muholi.